afternoon. My name's Christy Mactudis, and it's lowercase t, not uppercase T. And I'm fortunate to have known the Gupta family for approximately 20 years. I met Caton here on the University of Nevada campus in, of all places, a math class. And no, Dr. Gupta was not teaching. At the time, Caton was young and impressionable, so when I told him he was going to be my friend, he had no choice but to say yes. And then once I met Caton, I got to know Dr. Gupta and Mrs. Gupta and the rest of the Gupta family. I actually didn't meet Vipin until he moved here. But one night, as Caton and I were studying for an exam at the Gupta household, we were absolutely stuck on a differential equations problem. And Dr. Gupta came downstairs to help us. And when you try and teach math 800 level to what we were studying was math 300 level, it was like a foreign language. But he did try, and after all, Caton and I did pass the class, but I think that's part of the reason why Caton left the University of Nevada, Reno to go to the Naval Academy. But we've been friends ever since, after this school and the Naval Academy and through everything, and I've gotten to know everybody in the Gupta family, and it was very sad with his passing, but I would like to introduce you to my friend, Caton Gupta.
Thanks, Christy. As a future lawyer, I first feel I need to counter something that was said earlier when Maya mentioned that my dad would say, "Oh, it's okay to take a break from studying." I don't remember that him ever saying that. I don't think. So I question if that really happened, or it's definitely just evidence how people treat their grandchildren much different than their own children, because this didn't happen. So what do I remember about my dad? The thing I remember most about my dad, and what I've taken from his life, is, for the lack of a better term, his sense of adventure. Now you might ask how a mathematician who liked doing equations on napkins, crossword puzzles, and refused to wear jeans or short-sleeved shirts had a sense of adventure. But here was a man who left the only country he ever knew, a country where I don't think it ever gets colder than 80 degrees, to go study in Rochester, New York, a place where I don't think it ever gets warmer than 10 degrees, with absolutely no money, and then went on to stay in the United States for the rest of his life. Was stopped in Virginia, Illinois, Nevada, and Texas along the way. And through all that, he continued to do extensive traveling and work. He always took trips to Europe and South America for various conferences, and I remember he particularly liked Brazil and Belgium. And even though half his life was spent in Northern Illinois, and he loved Illinois, he left it to be chairman here at the math department. And why? Because he wanted to, because he knew he could do it. He knew that one needs to take advantage of the opportunities presented to them, even if they make life more difficult. And well, why not? And this is exactly why he briefly left academia to work at the State Department, analyzing Russian missile data to see how they used reentry vehicles in their missile tests. And he also analyzed casualty data in the event of a nuclear war between India and Pakistan, determining the number of casualties based on different scenarios and different strategies. And he even extended to work there for another year after his one-year fellowship was done. And even after he retired, he continued to go back to work there. He didn't mind the horrible DC traffic or the insane or frustrating work of federal government work. And I can tell you from personal experience, federal government work in DC is insane and it is frustrating. Unfortunately, due to the classified nature of his work, I don't know any more of what he did at the State Department. But I'm sure Ed Snowden or Private Manning would be happy to fill us in at a later date. And as many of you know, he never gave up an opportunity to go back to India. He loved to travel, and he couldn't imagine living without being able to travel. And this is what inspired me to live the kind of life that I did. And he always supported me and did it, even when others didn't. It's what inspired me 10 years ago. When I was finishing up my Navy tour in California, I asked the Navy for an overseas assignment, and they gave me plenty to choose from, including Japan, South Korea, and England. But when they offered me Belgium, I couldn't pass that up after remembering how my dad spoke so favorably of that country for his whole life. And when I told him I was moving there to work for NATO, he was very excited for me, because he remembered his many trips to Belgium, and I know he was glad there would now be another reason for him to go there again, which he did do to visit me and to also speak at a university there on some complicated math subject that I'll never understand. Because no matter what my dad did, math was always on his mind. And had I never moved so far from home, I never would have met my wife. So I'm very glad I did that move. And it was that same sense of adventure that influenced me to go to Iraq in 2007 and go back to law school, even though I was in my late 30s. And he always supported me in both those moves. In fact, he supported me in everything I did. If it wasn't for my dad's bold and sometimes controversial moves in life, I never would have lived where I lived, married who I married, or visited the strange but awesome places I visited, like Mount Kilimanjaro, Iceland, and Greenland. While I wasn't expecting to lose my father for at least another 10 to 15 years, I'm very thankful. Thankful that he was able to do what he loved and travel all the way to the very end. Because he would have hated life if he couldn't do what he loved. I'm thankful that he raised me in DeKalb, Illinois, the greatest small town in America, and introduced me to the Northern Illinois Huskies, a team that I still love to follow and that has given me a lot of joy in my life, and taught me to love Chicago, the greatest city in America, despite the propensity of its sporting teams to lose. This year's Blackhawks being a rare exception. And yes, I'm thankful that he introduced me to Reno, Nevada, and the University of Nevada, a school that I also attended, a team that I also love, and the school where I met my best friend, Christy, someone who I couldn't imagine life without, and who's played an incredible and supportive role in my family for the last 20 years, particularly during these last few difficult months. And I'm thankful he was there when I graduated from the Naval Academy. And he pinned on my wings of gold when I completed flight school. He saw my entire active duty Navy career, and he saw me get married, and that he learned of young Wolfie's birth before his stroke. I wouldn't have wanted to experience any of those things without him there, and I don't know if he even would have been able to if it wasn't for my father. So, on a personal note, I just want to thank everyone here for coming today. Many of you have traveled far, and it means a lot to me and my family to do that. I particularly want to thank an old great friend of mine and my family for the last 19 years, and that's Roger Jacobs. Roger and I met on induction day at the Naval Academy, and my parents first met him and his family shortly thereafter. Ever since, he's always been a welcome person in my parents' home, and when we were back here on leave, and my dad always loved it when he came and stayed at our house. Roger also, along with my dad, pinned on my wings of gold when I completed flight school. My dad was always thankful that you dragged me to the top of Mount Whitney in 1998, because he was always proud of that, and he knew I wouldn't have been able to do it without you. Roger has this uncanny adbility to get people to accomplish tasks that they don't think they can, but in fact they really can. And I think that's why my dad loved and admired Roger so much. So Roger and Jenny, thank you very much for making the trip out here. Thank you.